welcome to Mission 150, the podcast that tells stories from 150 years of Seventh-day Adventist mission to the world. To find out more about the mission of the Adventist Church today, go to adventistmission.org. That's adventistmission.org.
We're glad that you've joined us today. I'm Sam Nevis.
And I'm David Trim. Today we're delighted to have with us Dr. Oscar Osindo, who is the director of the Institute of World Mission, the body that is responsible for training those who the Seventh-day Adventist Church sends as missionaries. Oscar, welcome to Mission 150.
Thank you.
Oscar, you work in the United States today, here in the General Conference in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Yes.
But you weren't born here, were you?
No.
Tell us about your upbringing.
I am a native of Kenya in East Africa. I was born and raised up in Kenya.
Tell us where. Tell us a bit about your childhood.
I was raised up in the city of Mombasa, which is on the east coast of Kenya.
On the Indian Ocean.
Indian Ocean.
And were you raised a Seventh-day Adventist?
I was not raised a Seventh-day Adventist. I came to faith in the Adventist Church in my late teen years, when I was 18 years of age.
And how did that happen?
I was in college at the time, pursuing a career in electrical engineering.
Right.
And then some young people came around to do programs at this college, at the Railway Training Institute in Nairobi. That is when I heard this message, and I decided to follow the Lord as understood by Seventh-day Adventists.
Brilliant. How did you come to enter ministry?
So when I finished my course, I started to work for the Kenya Railways. And then one day, some two gentlemen from the local conference, Central Kenya Conference, approached me. The president of the conference and his youth director.
Right.
They approached me with my friend. I have another close friend. He's now a senior pastor in the South England Conference. So then
Who was that?
Dr. Michael Mbui.
Well, I know him well.
You know him well, yes. And he did a presentation the other day at...
That's right. Annual Council, I saw him.
Annual Council, yes.
He's a good friend.
Yes. That man, we were baptized together the same day.
Uh-huh.
And we hung together. And so the day that we were approached by these two gentlemen, pastors from the conference, and they said, young people, we sense you have a calling to ministry.
This is the president and the youth director.
The youth director, yeah. And the youth director today is the president of the division.
Oh, it's Dr. Ruguri.
Dr. Ruguri. And then they said, we sense you have a calling to the gospel ministry.
Did you sense you had a calling, or was it only they who had the calling?
They said.
I know, but did you sense it as well? Or?
We were active young people engaged in Bible studies, church planting besides our work, and actively serving the Lord. That's what we were doing. Never mind the terms, whether you call it a calling, but we answered God's call to serve him. And so when they came and they said, we sense you have a calling, I said, yeah, sure. So what about it? They said, we bring to you this from the Lord, that you join full-time ministry. And we said, no, but we just finished a course of study, and we are comfortably working, and we are enjoying what we are doing. We are fine. We'll continue working as lay people. And they said, think about it. So it was really a battle. We wrestled with ourselves, and eventually we said, yes, the Lord has called us, what we are doing, and now the Lord wants us into full-time ministry. And that is how I ended up in the full-time gospel ministry,
right.
David.
And initially in Kenya, in your homeland?
In my home country.
So give us a sense of what Kenya is like. Is it a homogeneous society, or is it diverse?
Oh.
That's a good question, because when we talk about any African country, many people have the idea that, well, it's in Africa.
It's all the same.
As if Africa is one country. No, there are plenty of differences from country to country. But within countries, there are differences too.
Oh yeah, Kenya is diverse. You have Africans and you have Europeans and you have Asians. But even when you look at the indigenous African people, again you have different ethnicities. We have 42, 43 or so.
43
people groups, distinct languages, customs, and manners. And if you want to put them into larger groupings, you can say we have Bantus, we have Kushites, we have Semites, we have Nilotes and Nilohamites.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But that's a good half dozen just
yeah. So just to let you know,
are the Maasai in one of those?
Yes,
groups?
the Maasais are Nilohamites.
Okay.
Right.
In that larger grouping.
Right.
Yes.
So, and religiously, is it diverse, or is it mostly?
And religiously, David, and Sam, it's diverse because you have Christians. Christians are the majority, with all the many
Christians are the majority. So that's the result of missionary work over the last 150 years.
Yes, that is the result of missionary work.
Protestants or Catholics?
Protestants and Catholics.
Okay.
Both.
Yeah, both. And Adventists, also a good number.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's also presumably African traditional religions.
African traditional religions. You have Hindus. Hindus, yes. We have about 4 million Hindus.
Really?
Yeah.
That's presumably mostly around Mombasa on the coast.
Mombasa, Nairobi, Kisumu, and Nakuru. And then also other smaller towns as well.
Right.
They're there.
What other religious groups?
The other religious groups are Muslim. Islam is a very active minority. And of course, they occupy certain areas like the northern part of Kenya. Most of the Cushitic people, Kushites, are Muslims. And also, when we say the Semites, the Arabs, we have Arabs on the east coast and the Swahili people and such groups that are associated with them. These are Muslims.
You spent quite some time working with Muslims.
Yes.
How did that start?
I was, first of all, having been a person that came from the coast, which is predominantly Islam, meaning I grew up with Muslims, and so I knew a little bit about Muslims and their lives, but that was not the calling for me. But the calling for me was when I was a pastor in Nairobi, in a part of Nairobi known as Eastleigh, which is inhabited by Somali people.
From the north.
From the north. This is like their city, their place. And so I was a pastor there. And one day while in my church, some men came to my church to confront me.
Really?
And ask me questions, doctrinal questions, and challenge me that the Bible I was holding was actually corrupted and was not the Word of God.
Goodness.
And they also
they came into your church to do this?
They came to my church.
Wow.
To confront me and show me how wrong I am. Jesus never died for our sins. And I had never heard of such, stuff. My theological training, my ministerial training never prepared me for such a thing. And so that then I started on a journey to respond.
And these are Muslims?
Yes, these are Muslims. And we held a huge debate, attended by thousands, for me to respond in the public arena about my belief.
Yes.
I love this.
You love that, Sam? It's scary. It's scary.
Sure it
is scary, yes.
So that's how then my journey started off, with just like that.
And so you felt a calling to do more ministry for Muslims?
I felt, by the way, when...
How did it go?
By the way, when this came around, I'll come to you, Sam. When this came around, I was planning to go to Newbold. I had an admission to go for pastoral ministry at Newbold College.
This is our Adventist college in England.
Yeah, that was around
where Sam and I were also students.
1993. And then when this this initiative came, even my church elders said to me, Pastor, this thing is exciting. Postpone. You're going, let's pursue it. And so we ended up.
I like your elder.
Huh?
I like your elder.
Yeah, you like my elder. And so we did the debate, and it's not a good way to witness, though. I mean, I can tell you now, it's not the best way.
It's exciting, but it's not the best way.
But it's not the best. But if, brothers, even in our own foolishness and mistakes, the Lord works through. And there are people who came to faith, who are still in the faith, and some of them are pastors now, senior pastors from a Muslim background, and serving.
That's a great story.
From those debates.
Yeah.
Now, your journey from Kenya to the United States wasn't a direct one. Where did you go from Kenya and to what position? And tell us how you came to make that transition.
Okay, remember first of all, I had given up on now going for my further studies to do my master's.
Right.
Just following, work among Muslims, it had expanded, all over Kenya, and we had gone to Tanzania, to start ministries there. That's when I met, for the first time, I met Pastor Geoffrey Mbwana. Then we
Who's
went,
now a vice president of the church.
We went to Uganda as well, opened up. So we expanded. And then we also made a breakthrough within the northern part of Kenya. And so in the year 2000, during the General Conference session, the General Conference invited me to attend International Council on Adventist Muslim Relations, one of the pre-meetings before the session. And so while at that meeting, and I made a presentation, somebody from Newbold College, a representative who was in that conference, Dr. Caleb Rosado.
Yes. He was a colleague of mine.
Yeah, he was a colleague of yours, I'm sure. So he approached me and said, Oscar, we have a program. We just started a program at Newbold College. It needs people like you with a practical experience to come and be part of the program. But we want you to come into the program as a student, but with a view of looking at the program, and then after that, please improve it. So that's how I ended up being a student at Newbold, but also going through the program so that I can make it improve and make it better. And so that's how I ended up also teaching part-time for Newbold, and we were with Velda Cox, who was in charge of the program at the time. And that's where I saw you, David.
That's where we first met.
That's where I saw you, man.
Because I was teaching at Newbold as well.
Yes, you were teaching there, and I remember when you defended, the day you defended successfully your PhD, and Dr. Baldam said, Mr. David Trim is now Dr. Trim. When you see him, congratulate him. That was 2001, right?
2003.
2003, yes.
Yes. Well, that's a great story. I didn't know that he did that, so that's a nice story to hear. But then once you finished at Newbold, you actually came to start working for the church in Britain, isn't that right?
Yeah, so I started to work for the church in Britain in 2002, South England Conference, through Pastor Don McFarlane.
You're right.
Invited me to spearhead, to start a ministry among Muslims in London. So I was doing half-time for South England Conference and half-time for Newbold College.
Right. So you had now become a missionary to Britain, in effect.
I had become a missionary, yeah.
And how did that go?
I tell you, it went well in my view. I learned a lot, and that was like, my first really, part of my cross-cultural experience outside Kenya. Because, living in Kenya itself, you are going back and forth between and across many cultures. But, living in Britain, that was another experience as well.
Did you experience culture shock?
Yeah, of course, I experienced culture shock because as much as, Kenya or Africa, we are like diverse, but there are certain things that, like, for example, time. See, like today I was here much earlier, in time. I learned this thing, there.
Yes.
Keep time. So yes, that a lot of many other things, the English people.
Right.
Are you English?
I'm British, yes.
Yeah, you are British, yes. You are different from us. Yeah, even the way that you speak, English is your language. I'm not, so my accent is different. It's funny, and so trying to.
Not funny.
Some parallels here. Right about the same time,
Yeah.
Pastor Don McFarlane, the president of the South England Conference,
Yeah.
was calling me
Yeah.
to sponsor my master's at Newbold. I was about to finish in Brazil.
Yeah.
And so I arrived at Newbold College in 2004, September.
Yeah.
So same person.
Great leader.
Great leader.
Visionary.
Absolutely.
Mission
Don
focused.
McFarlane, absolutely.
Don McFarlane.
Yeah,
And
visionary leader.
He had a unique perspective that I think is very interesting about mission, incidentally. He believes that when you have many immigrants who are themselves Seventh-day Adventists, the first generation should be in a church by themselves with a good pastor from their territory, where their transition to this new culture is done slowly.
Yes.
In lieu of that, what happens is the immigrants who come, they all move to the local churches.
Yeah.
And if there isn't this special space for them, they transform the local churches.
Yeah.
And that transformation is not necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
Missiologically,
to the people that are there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was, as far as I can tell, one of our last leaders who had this driving vision to make sure that each community had great pastors and leaders so that they could do the work among the same people groups who lived in London and who lived in those large cities. I always thought that was a very interesting thing.
Yes.
Well noted.
So he did that to you.
Yeah.
And at first he wanted to do that to me, prepare me at Newbold to be a pastor of the Portuguese churches. But because I spoke English, having studied there from my teenage years, he then assigned me to English-speaking churches, not the Portuguese ones. But anyway, that was the vision at the time.
Right. Yeah. Oscar, I think you served 4 years in the South England Conference, is that right?
I did. Yeah, I did around 4 years up to.
Right. And then in 2006, you became Associate Director of the General Conference Global Center for Adventist Muslim Relations. And you had to move to Cyprus, right?
Yes, we did. I did move to Cyprus. I was called in 2005, towards the end of 2005. But then, of course, you cannot just leave teaching and just pack up and go. You have to finish with the students' assignments. And so I had to, complete that. And then January 1, 2006, I was ready to start with the GCMR.
What did your job involve as being an Associate Director of the Adventist Muslim Relations Center?
Yeah. My job was to, and of course the job of the center directors and the associates, and I was one of those, is to help with the divisions and the unions in working among Muslims, relating with Muslims, understanding Islam, discipling Muslim people that in Jesus Christ. So that was our work.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had to travel widely for that then, because you say you were working with divisions and unions. So you were based in Cyprus, but you didn't stay there.
We were based in Cyprus, but my work was global.
Right.
It wasn't local, so I was in and out of the country.
Right.
Yeah.
So by around 2013, Oscar, you had lived in 3 different countries. You'd actually worked in quite a number of countries.
Yeah.
How did you come to make the next big transition in your ministry, which was from Adventist Muslim Relations to the Institute of World Mission, or IWM, as we tend to call it in this building?
Yeah. So 2009, David, AUA, the Adventist University of Africa.
Yes, in Kenya.
In Kenya, started a program, a master's program in missiology with emphasis on Islam. So I relocated from Cyprus to Nairobi at AUA to help with the development, the curriculum development of this program, but at the same time also working for for GCMR. So I was like doing two jobs.
Right.
I ended up being the program director, the master's program director, and as well as doing serving the World Church up to 2013. In 2012 December, we were in Cambodia for the center directors meetings, an annual event.
Right.
This year, 2023, we are going to India and Calcutta.
Yes, and I'll be there.
You'll be there as well.
Yeah.
So while there, my colleague, my friend Cheryl Doss,
Who was the then
the
director
of the institute,
The institute, yes.
came around like a joke. I mean, I was having breakfast, and she came and we had breakfast with her, and she said, "Oscar, would you mind working for the institute?" I said, "Cheryl, what a joke this morning. You know me. My whole mind, my whole thinking, I think Islam. I think Muslim ministry. I love what I'm doing." I said, but you'll still enrich the institute with that. Please. I said, okay, I'll think about it. Then went back home and, had a conversation with my wife.
How well did you know Cheryl Doss at that time?
We were part of the larger, mission or missiologists, within the church. So,
Right.
so on that we had interaction from time to time.
Right. So
Not like, professional association.
Right. So here you've been hit with this surprising new development. You've been asked to move from Adventist-Muslim relations to IWM.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to make your mind up?
It took me a couple of weeks, I don't know, maybe a few months to make up my mind. And then in 2013, I said, yeah, sure, we are going to move. But also, again, I was teaching and directing the master's program in missiology at AUA. So I cannot just wake up and leave.
No.
So I had to continue to do my teaching until January 1, 2014. That's when officially I transited from GCMR to the Institute of World Mission.
And how many years were you an associate director of IWM?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
7 years.
What's interesting is you became the first director of the Institute who is a non-Westerner, let's say.
Yeah.
What impact do you think that is having in the Institute?
You know what? I'll go back to David. I heard David make a comment. I don't remember which forum that was, maybe within our own mission family. And David said, he's a historian, so he marks dates and events. And David said, that marks the appointment of Oscar coming from the traditional mission field where we receive missionaries to being director of the Institute. That marks the official shift of, how did you say it, David? Of, that the church has...
Yes, the church, it was a significant transition.
It's a significant transition from the global north to the global south.
Previously, all the training was done by Westerners, by people from America or Europe.
Yeah.
And now suddenly, instead, the people who used to be the mission recipients are now the people who are in charge of the mission training.
Yeah.
So it was a significant date.
The thing I appreciate about David is that if you hang around with him, you see history happening, and he points out this is history happening now.
Yeah. So So anyway, But then when I joined the Institute, as well, again, I was the first person of probably color, black,
Yes.
Joining the Institute, and I added value. I added value in the way that we do things, and I was able to explain some things from my Western brothers and sisters that, as much as we say this, but I think this is the reality. This is how we understand, and that's very useful to missionaries as we train them to go to these places, because I come from these places. I know what our people think, the worldview. So that was very useful.
Right.
For example, David, the evaluations, there was something in the evaluations that used to say, did the presenter make eye contact? And so then people ever say, maybe good eye contact or poor eye contact. I said to my friends, we come from societies whereby making eye contact is rude.
It's very bad.
It's not something that is not even respectful.
Yeah.
So if you're asking for this kind of evaluation, I could probably end up poorly because I'm learning. Yeah, so
I was the pastor of Wimbledon International,
yes.
Seventh-day Adventist
yes.
Church in London, and we had 56 nationalities. And many of them were nationalities where that is the case.
Yeah.
Were cultures where if you look somebody in the eye,
Yeah.
that is a sense of you consider yourself to be the same level of authority as them, if not higher, because you're looking them in the eye.
Confrontational. No.
So we had to help our young people to deal with authorities in England in a different way to which they had been taught.
Yeah.
So when you talk to a policeman in England, do not let your eyes gaze everywhere. Look squarely in the eye and tell them.
Yeah.
Or they'll think you're shifty.
They're shifty, there's something wrong here.
Yes.
So I as you started to describe it, I remember that nuance.
So Oscar, what is it the Institute of World Mission does? I know that you have 3 or maybe more than 3 mission institutes a year.
Yes.
What does a mission institute do?
Yeah, a mission institute does a range of things. Let me say that, first of all, on the overall, the Mission Institute cultivates the mission vision. We cultivate mission vision for the church. We prepare cross-cultural workers for the church, and we nurture missionary witness on the overall. But now looking slightly deeper, we do missionary training and care. We have institutes that we do for missionaries, and we continue also to care for them when they are in field. And when they return, we also hold reentries, what we call reentries, so that, and when people have been away for 5, 10 years, whatever.
Yeah, it's a big transition.
When they come back, it's a big transition again. It's their country, but things have changed.
Yes.
And so we hold a 1-week debriefing for them and their children as well. Besides just doing that, we also engage in research and material development. By the way, we are preparing an Ellen G. White compilation as part of a contribution to the 150 years.
Of mission next year.
Next year,
which is the 150 in our name.
We've been able to get quotations from Ellen White. What she says about cross-cultural mission service, and even her own experience as a missionary.
Right. 2 years in Europe and 9 years in Australia.
In Australia.
Yeah.
So we have gone through all those stuff, and we're coming up with a compilation. Right now, as I talk, we have already submitted the manuscript to the E.G. White Estate Board. Actually, they are meeting today to look at the manuscript so they can read, and we're ready to do that. That's just an example.
So you've got the mission institutes where you actually do, as it were, the hands-on training, but then you've got the rest of the year you're engaged in generating resources for mission.
Yeah, resources for mission. We have a huge resource online on our website, podcasts and live webinars. We do that and other resources. And then we also empower other Seventh-day Adventist entities, churches, if we have time and churches need us, we go help them. In institutions, schools, we do that as well. Just recently, we came from Norway.
Right. Tell us about that.
We came from Northern Norway conference. That is a real post-Christian window. There's a lot that needs to be done.
And what did you do in Norway?
We went to prepare the ground, and we are set for a long-term mission initiative with Northern Norway, long-term. So we went there to prepare the ground, put certain plans in place. Just the other day, I had a meeting with the president of the union and my team in our office here in the GC building, and looking at the way forward. So we do that as well. We are involved on field work.
But in a mission institute, how long does a mission institute last?
The mission institute lasts for 3 weeks.
And is that long enough for meaningful training to take place?
We believe so that is long enough for meaningful change to take place, because at the Institute we are not teaching, we're not doing a Bible study, we're not teaching doctrine. We are simply providing missionaries with a neutral language in which to live abroad as they adjust to a new culture.
And to teach them cultural competencies.
Cultural competence. By the way, when the Mission Institute started in 1966, used to be 6 weeks
Yes.
of training. And that way, and then this is long, and then came to 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks at one point. Oh no, this is too short, and then out to 3 weeks.
Would you like to see it go back to 6 weeks?
6 weeks is rather long. I think we are doing well with 3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we're doing well.
Tell me about the reaction. In the one that I went to,
Yes.
people loved it. My family loved it. It
Yeah.
was transformational for us.
Yeah.
Some people at the time, maybe because of the name, they thought they would learn the doctrines and the Bible studies
Yeah.
and how to do
Yeah.
mission and,
Yeah.
and how to lead people to baptisms and so on, which, am I right in assuming that the Institute assumes that those are skills that you have in your own culture?
Exactly.
And the Institute will expose you to the worldview differences that exist in the world,
exactly.
and more of the cultural and anthropological process that you need to understand in order to do what you already know how to do in your own culture, how to translate that to another culture.
Yes.
And some people have the wrong idea, and it takes about a week. Very few, actually. In mine, it was 2 families. But then they got it. And when they got it, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
What's the reaction of people in this journey?
You know, you captured it very well. This is what we hear all the time. We look through the evaluations. We have not seen something negative like, oh, I didn't like it, or this was a waste of my time. There is a lot of appreciation from adults, from their children, about having those 3 weeks at the Institute.
Right.
A lot of appreciation.
How do missionaries feel about the training that they've gone through? Because obviously you keep in touch with them.
Yeah.
How do they describe afterwards?
Just speaking, like one comment here from 2008, that's a long time ago. Just 2000, at Andrews University Institute, 2008, IWM provided an understanding of cultural differences and the need to present the gospel in a cultural concept. Also helped to understand our roles as servant missionary like Christ who lived among us. The program was professional, well organized, and fun. A very useful program. Thanks.
Is that kind of typical of the responses you get?
This is typical.
And how does it work with you providing, because I know that you also provide some kind of a degree of missionary care at remotely, but you keep in touch with missionaries and try to support them when they're actually in the field. How does that work?
First of all, we provide online resources, because sometimes people will say, we need a bit of refresher, we need a resource that we can lay our hands on. And so we have provided those resources, they are available to them, because at the Institute sometimes we are covering things in a faster way, and we are covering a lot of stuff. But if somebody wants to follow up and understand more, they can go to a podcast, they can go to a webinar, and they can find more. Secondly, also, we are the people that spend a whole 3 weeks with missionaries at Mission Institute. That's a quality time we have with them.
Right.
So they know us and we know them.
And they trust you.
They trust us. We know.
Point.
Yeah.
We know who they are. We know their children. And so when they have issues or they need help, we become the first people they think of, and they easily interact with us. I mean, you know what? They don't see us as like we are general conference, like officers.
Yeah.
You know, we just because we play a lot of games with them.
That's only on the first 5 days.
Yeah.
After that,
So it's easy for them to approach us. We receive a lot of calls, messages. I have this question, I have that, I need this help. And we help where we can, and sometimes we refer them to IPRF if it is administrative help they need, or if we realize they need the help of a psychologist, then we bring in the psychologist.
You're able to do that.
We're able to do that.
Oscar, what is your vision for the Institute of World Mission?
Besides what we have said that we offer and we do, right now we know the world church is talking about missionary focus.
Mm-hmm.
And as as we send our missionaries out in different cultural contexts to serve there, missiological issues arise. And so my dream is that we need to be on the cutting edge of mission research and education so that we are able to deal and help, the world church and missionaries with these issues that arise from the mission field. Also, another wish or dream of mine, of ours, is that we need to be active in helping our churches, particularly, and we're talking about the multicultural churches in our cities. They need a lot of help. And we have been able to interact with some and help, and we feel that we need to do more, even to produce the resources that can help grow our multicultural churches.
Right.
Yeah.
Oscar, it's been a wonderful conversation, but we have to draw this episode to a close.
Thank you.
Dr. Oscar Osindo, Director of the Institute of World Mission, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining another episode of Mission 150. We hope that you are really enjoying these explorations of what Adventist mission means and the history of it. Please keep watching on AdventistReview.tv, on the Seventh-day Adventist Church's YouTube channel, or listening on your favorite podcast platform. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. If you want to know more about Adventist missionary work and missionaries today, go to adventistmission.org. If you want to find mission opportunities, go to vividfaith.com. We'll be back next week with more on the inspiring history of Adventist mission around the world.